Well, the Thursday, February 22nd, 20th, Board of Directors meeting to order. We have a roll call, please.
Yes, Donovan. We have Todd Donovan is with us online. Hawkinson.
Here.
Horchise.
Here.
Wattenbach.
Here.
Lilyquist.
Here.
Lund is absent. Do we have executives to do online? Looks like he's absent. Stewart.
Here.
Williams.
Here.
And Darwin.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The board will now meet in executive session to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency potential litigation as allowed by RCW 42.30.1101I. The board will be in executive session for approximately 10 minutes until 12 after, till 8:12, and the board is not expected to take further action on this matter following the executive session. I will call the regular meeting back to order, and we'll move on to citizen communications. Was there any? I've not received anything. Anyone in the room? I don't see it. Anyone online, if you would unmute and address the board for 3 minutes or less. Not seeing any, we'll move on to board action. Consideration of approval of interlocal agreement with Sourcewell.
Yes, Miranda's actually out today, so Aaron's kindly here. Just to tee it up, it's really a housekeeping thing. This is an interlocal agreement with a cooperative purchasing group out of Minnesota. Turns out it's a government agency, so we need an interlocal. We've been working with them for a number of years, but realized we needed an interlocal. So I'll pause there.
That's great. You get the fourth string quarterback today and said most of the meat of it for me. But yes, we are requesting that the board of directors authorize WTA to enter an interlocal agreement with Sourcewell, a Minnesota public agency, for the purpose of cooperative purchasing.
Michael.
Yeah, I think it's a great, let's approve it, but how much on average do we spend with this? It's like 10,000, 2,000?
That's hard to track because we actually enter into the agreements with the people that they connect us with. So
okay.
I don't have that number.
That's fine. I would move approval.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the interlocal. Any other discussion at this point? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. We now move to the consent agenda.
Move approval. Second.
A motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All opposed, say. Hearing no opposition, we're going to pass that, and we move to board reports.
Yes. So while Rochelle's kindly going to drive the slides for me while she's pulling that up, the intent of this was, as we're going through this year and we're making a lot of decisions on finance and service allocation, and a lot of these bigger ticket item things, thought maybe what would be helpful is to just have a factual presentation on things about WTA, so service and fleet and some of the things to make sure we have a baseline. This is really kind of an experiment to see if it's helpful or not. So the questions I'll have for the board is it helpful? If it is helpful, are there things missing, or is there too much in it? And then would it be helpful to review it annually? One of the things I was thinking about this would be good for new board members as they come on to go over some of this information. And if it is helpful, then I will send it to the board. Go from there. So most of the stuff in here, many of you, particularly those that have been on the board for a long time, already know, but wanted to go over the kind of background and the facts, so we're all on the same page as we go forward. Rochelle, next slide, please. So this is just a summary governance wise, who makes up the board. I apologize, it's a little small. It reminds us that we have our services include the fixed route and the paratransit zone service and our rideshare program on it. Last year had about 3.7 million. We'll talk a little bit more about that and how that breaks down. And then just talking about our intended outcomes, what we're trying to do by doing all these things, what are the outcomes that we're hoping to drive from these, and then what are those priorities that we have to resource and work on. Next slide, please. If there's questions as we go through, please let me know. Just a reminder, our mission, bigger one back here, in case for those in the room. But essentially, our mission is to enhance our community, and we do it by delivering safe, friendly, efficient, reliable service, and then by offering environmentally and innovative transportation solutions, as well as through partnerships to improve transportation. So that's kind of where our mission is. Next thing I was hoping to talk about was, the next slide, please, Rochelle, is our approach. Kind of this is the foundation. I apologize. You can tell that I took a crayon and tried to put this together, and it looks like it. Thank you. Yeah. Me and PowerPoint aren't the best of friends. So
Especially the green part.
But as I was thinking about our mission to enhance the community and what that means, lived in Newport, Rhode Island back in the early 90s, and a hurricane blew through. I remember watching a tree that was bent all the way over, and the tip of the tree was touching the ground, and it didn't break or come out of the ground. But then there were all these other trees that did, and being that this was the early 90s, you couldn't really hop on the internet to go figure out why. But I started asking some folks, what happened? Why is that? And they talked about the roots and the things that go into those trees that are able to adapt and overcome the things that happen to withstand the winds and the droughts and storms and those kinds of things. And so it caused me to start thinking, not at that time, but as life went on and I started getting into different roles and things, started thinking about, okay, how does that apply to organizations, and how do we make it so that we as an organization can flourish? Because we all know things go through ebbs and flows, and things are good and things are bad and things are tough, and how do we do that? And so using that tree analogy, building strong roots was one of the things I found out, and looking at that as kind of, okay, that's the internal to the tree. And for us, it's our people, it's our character, our values, our integrity, managing our resources well to try to develop that strong culture to withstand things, and then working on the external things which provide that environment. So the soil, and trying to make sure that if plants
call it, Les, you call it dirt in the slide. It should be soil.
Dirt, sorry.
Soil.
Yeah, sorry. Dirt.
No, it should be soil.
Should be soil. Okay. Good. Thank you. Thank you.
Wet compost.
Compost. Yes, exactly. So the water, the sun, those kinds of things. And so looking at those things are, okay, what can we do on the external level with partnerships and engagement and those things to strengthen those external things, so that we are ready and have those strong roots and favorable environment, and as these things happening to help us flourish, to make a better community, which is ultimately our mission. So thank you for bearing with me. I was particularly happy with the little cloud with the wind blowing to do that. Next slide, please. Sticking on that, so trying to look at, okay, taking our mission, the capabilities that we have, the opportunities are there, and as we talk about routinely, that value proposition, and kind of the essence of what we're trying to do in our strategy is creating kind of a unique and valuable position. We are the transit agency, the transportation authority, and transit agency in Whatcom County, so we have a unique role. But how do we create that valuable position to do that? And so looking at these things and keeping our eye on that, and then always making sure that we're aligning. I love that word alignment. Making sure that our mission, our purpose, our value proposition are all aligned. And then back to that last slide, the culture and the external things, aligning those as we move forward into more of the tactical things that we're trying to do. Next slide, please. And then the other thing is, as we're doing this internally, is making sure we talked about that purpose, mission, strategy. Our purpose to connect people to opportunities, our mission that we talked about, and those outcomes, the strategy we're trying to do for that. It's trying to tie that to all phases of our operation, whether that's the planning, the execution, and doing that to drive towards a shared consciousness and understanding, so that people are understanding what it is that we're trying to accomplish, so that we can develop those new ideas that we talked about, take prudent and mitigated risks, being able to assess that, and maximize our capabilities, and doing so through sound, efficient management practices as we do that. If we're doing that and we've given people empowered execution, that helps with the adaptable and flexible and nimble when those things happen that we need to turn to. We understand where we're going, why we're going there, where we're headed, and then we can, through that shared consciousness, adapt and be flexible, and as the Marines say, adapt and overcome those things, and making sure that's across the spectrum of issues that may come up in the business lines that we have. And then the last part of that is that ties it back is always making sure you're assessing what's going on. Are you being successful? And what's the reason if you're not being successful? Is it your mission is creeped? Is it that there's resourcing issues? Is it something else, external, internal? What is it? And then sharing that information and being able to adapt and then feed that back into the purpose, the mission, and strategy to see where we're headed. So I will, and then the next slide, Rochelle, please. And then that always leads to, bless you.
Thank you.
Never, ever, ever give up. I love that.
The green still looks good.
Yeah.
So we're the frog, right?
What's that?
We're the frog,
We're the
right?
frog,
Okay,
yep.
good.
Yep. Yeah, that's good. Okay, now I need to remember, it's green is the key. So that's kind of a foundational approach that we have, and so that's why some of the things you hear we talk about, things of that nature. So, next slide, please. So moving into service. Next slide, please. So one of the lessons as I was pulling this together for if this is helpful and want to do it into the future is need to do this presentation a little bit later in the year after we get numbers together. So that was a lesson to me as I was pulling this together and talking to folks on it. So this is out of our service performance report for 23. We're able to track down some numbers for reportings for 24, which I hand jammed in at the bottom so you can see where those things are. We don't necessarily have all that other detailed information for each of those yet, but the totals are there, so you can see where things are headed upwards in fixed route, paratransit, van pool, and then the hop obviously applicable.
Just a micro comment. I just downloaded a state of transit report, national. And yeah, a lot of agencies are just below or just at their pre-pandemic levels, and some are just above. So we appear to be kind of at trend.
Yeah, we're definitely going in that direction. We've got a little bit of a slide later, at least through 23, we can show you. It goes back a little bit. Right. Next slide, please. Thought this was interesting. Becky does a great job in trying to break down this information. This was in our annual report, but seeing number of boardings by fare type. Just interesting to see where that breaks out. And if this is helpful, I'll send you all this information so that you have it.
Yeah, I'd like to see it.
Yeah, so you can spend a little more time with it if you want and refer back to it. Next slide, please. And then this is just breaking down, excuse me, so you can see by type of service, our boardings, the revenue hours, and passenger miles, where that breaks out. So you can see fixed route is the dominance amount for boardings. And then as you kind of go down and see on passenger miles and then revenue miles, how the paratransit for revenue hours, that piece of the pie expands. So it's kind of how you divide and slice, which is important as we're going through discussions later in this year on service and so forth. Next slide, please. Leading into our service allocation next board meeting on the 6th. Just broke the service down. This is coverage, and then the next slide we'll talk about frequency. As we've talked about, the coverage service is about 60% of our service, and you can kind of see the aspects of that, where it goes, how it works. But the key takeaway out of that is knowing that's about 60% coverage out into the less populated areas. Next slide, please. And then the go lines are the frequency. That's about 40% of the revenue hours, and that's really defined as service every 15 minutes. And you can see where that is. That picture shows each of the go lines, and as you can tell, it's in Bellingham city limits. The last bullet I thought was interesting about serving priority populations and where the ridership, that's where more people live, so the opportunity to ride the bus is greater than some other places where there's not.
Almost by design.
I'm sorry?
Almost by design.
Almost by design. Next slide, please. Added this just to show some of the challenges and issues that as we go forward. The map on the right is taken out of the Whatcom County Council of Governments Way to Go Whatcom plan. That's what they're seeing for 2045 on roads. Some of the things that then hits us from a WTA perspective is that if traffic and congestion is going to keep on time performance, does that mean you need to get more buses and more people to, I think, yes, stay on time, which then means you're providing the same amount of service at a more expensive cost to do that because of congestion. So what are those things that we can do in partnership? Again, going back to that, how do we create that so we can flourish partnerships to do that? But what are those things that we can do to prevent those things from happening? As that Chinese proverb was, best time to do something was 20 years ago, second best time is now. And so what can we be looking at to do now to prepare ourselves into that future? And then trying to look at things like travel behavior, the board with the new service, looking at how do we get ahead of travel behavior and help form that behavior. Places like King Mountain, Waterfront, Old Town, those kinds of where we know there's lots of units going in. And then how do we talk about the coverage frequency and allocate our resources And then the carbon reduction of the fleet transition is that's or transition. That's going to be a big one. It's expensive. All right, moving out of service, I'll pause there if there's any questions on service, and then we can move to the next slide, please. This is moving into fleet. I thought it was just interesting for folks to know, breaking down our vehicle types. So fixed route, we have 81 total vehicles. Part of that is overlap of vehicles that have come in as we've been ordering and until we get those out, so forth. But that's the current. These are current snapshot in time.
Says PM interval, fixed route buses, PM.
Preventive maintenance.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so thought it was interesting. These are kinds of the things that down in fleet, Andy, please jump in when I'm doing anything wrong.
Oh, it's good so far.
With those, the preventive maintenance, for example, every 6,000 miles driven for state of good repair on that. Useful life per FTA is 12 years. If there are financial challenges and we decide to extend that useful life out to do that, what does that mean for engine rebuilds, for preventive maintenance, for resourcing and those kinds of issues. So working through some of those things, Andy's thinking through on those things. But you can kind of see how it breaks down by fixed route and then by paratransit as well. You see the amount of miles that are put on those paratransit vehicles are pretty extensive that go.
Is that why their useful life is 4 years as opposed to 12?
Yeah.
Just the volume of miles they travel?
After 12 years on a fixed route, how many miles would you expect on that bus?
450,000 or 500,000.
And then you can see on the paratransit, we have a mix of propane and gas. The gas vehicles perform much better than the propane. Actually, cost-wise, are similar because of the better performance of them. Okay. Next slide, please. Then we also have our rideshare, which used to be called Vanpool, and then they switched it to rideshare. So I'm still going through that. I will say Vanpool and Whatcom will say rideshare. So I put them both up there for me. But you can see how many we've got on that and where those how those break down and the different types of passenger sizes, because different carpools have different numbers of people where they're going and so forth, and be able to do that. And then our non-revenue vehicles, those are vehicles that are used, for example, driver shuttles to get, go to meet a bus somewhere and switch out, those kinds of things. Next slide, please. This is from our, now moving into finance, this is from our 2025 budget. As we're working on a budget guide to try to put it, you can see how those things work together with some of the highlights at the bottom of the assumptions that they go through. Big takeaways from that is we've talked about is on the operating side. I have another slide in just a second on operating, but you can see sales tax and our operating expenses don't align. That's our big challenge into the future. Fortunately, through board financial stewardship over time, we've got very healthy reserves, and even though we are drawing down deficit spending 10 million of those cash reserves, we're still carrying over 35 million into 26 in reserves on that, so we still have a healthy reserve.
Just a note too, because there's a lot to take in here. You'll be receiving probably today what we're calling our budget at a glance. So you'll see those kind of other things in your email box.
Next slide, please. And this is just put the highlight on the operational budget for 25, so you can see how it breaks down from revenue and expenses and where things break out, like fuel and those kinds of things. So I'd also highlight fares, because that'll be talked about later this year. As you can see, fares are about 1.7 million. That's gross. When you back out cost of collection and so forth, which is about 400,000, 500,000. So you net about 1.2. So just want to highlight that because that will be a part of a discussion later this year. Okay. Next slide, please. Speaking of costs, this is from our, the Federal Transit Administration has a national transit database. This is just a kind of a very simplistic way out of FTA's tracking on how much does it cost to operate per mile or per hour our various types of vehicles. Aaron was very quick to point out that this doesn't include like depreciation costs into that. And there's some accounting adjustments, pensions, and some other things and stuff. So what NTD requires us to report and what we track are slightly different a little bit based on those accounting things. But this gives you kind of a rough order of magnitude of how much it.
Well, this is part of a national database, right?
Correct.
And that's even if the accounting is funny, it's an agreed to accounting, so we can compare ourselves. And what we've done also is we divided the rural routes versus the urban routes and make different performance numbers, right? But that's what's nice too compared to other agencies. What are their numbers like? If they're an urban agency, if they're a rural agency. So
we can work on bringing
peculiar
something
numbers
back
are so useful if they're peculiar in the same way for everyone, right?
They're a funny apple to apple.
At least they're Apple. They're maybe they may be like Asian pear to Asian pear, but at least we can do the comparison. Asian pears are good. Come on.
They're delicious.
Yeah, I'm starting to get 100. Good thing we have donuts here, so I don't have to eat fruit. Okay, next slide, please. So this is a breakout down of our employee mix. 326 is authorized. Next slide, we'll talk a little bit. We have, I think, 321 on board, but this is authorized. And you can see how it breaks down. The thing that I thought was important is the 11% is administration. The rest are all focused on service. That was an interesting breakout. And then we broke out service-related transit, the operational support for that, so forth, maintenance, customer service, those kinds of things that you need to have that for operation going. Okay, next slide, please. And this is at a glance of us on hand, just kind of our demographics. I know some board members have asked some of these questions on there, so you can see things like average tenure, all employees about 8.5 years, transit operators about 7.5 years. See promotions over the last 5 years on there, which I thought was interesting. And then the number of transit operators hired. And we're thinking we're kind of caught up from COVID and those shortages that we had there. So I think into the future that number will change downward as it goes. All right. Next slide, please. And then this was from the TSO report that Jeff provided after a year of TSO service, which ended last August. So we're into year 2 on it. But just to give you kind of an idea on the interactions that they've had.
What's TSO?
I'm sorry, our transit safety officers. The new program that we had with the 4 folks led by Jeff that are out and about, providing really kind of good support to our operators out there that they can call and have somebody dedicated to show up. One of the interesting things that I found out of that was out of the 2,400 approximate incidents, only 3 or 30 required elevating it to BPD, that they weren't able to de-escalate on their own, which I thought was pretty impressive. So, okay, next slide, and that would be it. So again, this was an experiment to see if this information was helpful. Already got down that we should do this at a different time in the year where we have 24 numbers, so I apologize on that when I put that on for now on the board workshop. I didn't think about that part, so my fault. But is it helpful? And yes,
Yeah.
okay.
And I guess it'd be nice if you could route it around so that we can look at it again.
Yes, yeah, we'll send it to you so that you can refer to it back. And since if the board does find it helpful, what we'll do is we'll add it to the board notebook as well and use this for new board membership. And then if it's helpful each year, we could go over this, kind of see where it is, and then we can kind of compare it to where things were, where they are now, those kinds of things. And some of this is snapshots.
So my feedback is I think this is pitched exactly the right level of detail. Any more detail might be more than the board needs, any less, and I think we wouldn't have awareness of all the aspects. So I appreciated where you pitched it.
Okay, thank you. All right, so what I'll do is, and as you think about it, I mean, this is obviously a work in progress. 1 second, Chris, and I'll get right. So it's a work in progress. So if there's other things as we're going through may pop up or you think of things, please let me know and we can go from there.
Chris?
Yeah, Les, I was just going to say that, in terms of advocacy, I don't know if Mayor Lund is here or not, but I bet you the Neighborhood Association, the Mayor's Neighborhood Advisory Commission would love to see a presentation like this, just because it's really interesting and exciting, and you can certainly get a lot of advocates excited about the work that you all are doing.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
It's like third Wednesday of the month, I think. Chris,
Yes.
is that third Wednesday?
Yeah, it was last night actually. Yeah, so third Wednesday of every month. Yeah.
I saw your little name there on the screen last night.
I saw you there. I saw you sitting there in the little gallery.
Great, thanks, Chris.
You're not driving, Chris, right? You're parked.
No, I parked. I finally parked. Yes.
Okay, so next steps, I will clean this up a little bit and then send it out to everybody so that you have it going forward. And then we'll just add this to our annual thing probably a little bit later after we get the 24 numbers together. Okay. Great. Thank you for your willingness to experiment and see if it was helpful. Appreciate it.
Any other questions for us? Not seeing any. I will move on to other business. I have 2 things to share. One is our next meeting on March 6th is our board workshop. So it's from 8 till noon. And I just like to encourage everybody to try and attend in person. It's an extended time to work together. It's time to see each other across the table and be able to see fully body language and facial expressions and talk to each other. So the focus is going to be on service allocation. Is that correct?
Yes, and financial.
And financial. So important things for us to consider as a board. So yeah, just.
If I may.
Yes, please.
Maureen and Tim have done a whale of a job creating a game on service allocation, an exercise game to play to help visualize and see things. So being in person would certainly make that game much more fun.
There actually won't be any value unless you're in person.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, it'll be very difficult to participate or understand what's happening for that portion.
Great.
And we will have food and coffee.
Oh, food too. So food and games.
I love to attend in person, but I'll be in Hawaii, but I will come.
Oh my goodness.
So was that a motion to move the meeting to Hawaii?
I'll be in Hawaii with Scott.
Okay. Well, it sounds like our quorum is gonna be in Hawaii, so.
Which island, Scott?
Maui.
Okay.
Todd's gonna be on Kauai. Yeah, so, just a quick, personal story too. We had a friend who was hired by WTA as a driver just recently. He was a coach to my 8th grade son, and my son is very good friends with his son. So for last Friday, Nooksack didn't have school, and 4 8th grade boys got on the bus in Sumas and rode into the Cordata station, walked to the mall, walked over to Value Village, ended up bowling, and didn't come home till probably 7 o'clock that night. I was getting texts from the other moms saying, oh, should they ride the bus at night? And I said, hey, WTA is great. They'll be fine. And so they thanked me for that perspective. The boys rode the bus home. I will just say, Leroy, our friend, was in town as kind of a safety net. So. But it was very cool to, Cy came home and he was like, yeah, it was so easy, and we rode the bus. So just as, a story from rural Whatcom County, it is very powerful to give that ability to get someplace to kids that don't have the ability to drive themselves. So, and it was free, and they were so excited about that. So thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Sorry, that probably was under announcements too. But
That's great.
any other announcements? Seeing none, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.